One of the things that we're always trying to do in mixing is get rid of the mud and make sure we've got lots more clarity and that we can hear all of our tracks alongside each other. One of the best starting points for this is actually using a high-pass filter. And a high-pass filter is just something that rolls all of the low end off beneath a certain point. And today what I'd like to show you is a little tip that is kind of almost like a foolproof way of finding a really good place to set that high-pass filter to give you this early win in your mixes. So I've got an unmixed track for you here. I'm just going to play you a little bit of the track first, and then we'll go in and we'll set our high pass filter, and I'll show you how I like to do that. What my aim is to just clear out any of the low end junk that's just going to add up across all the tracks and just make our mix a little less clear, a little more muddy. Let's have a listen. Okay, so that's the little bit of music that we're going to be working on. So first of all, you will find that you do maybe nothing on the really low end instruments like the kick and the bass. But let's start with the kick. So what I do is open up something like Nectar by Isotope. And this relies on having an EQ that has an analyzer that lets you see the frequencies. And what we're going to do is take the high pass filter for this, because I really want to cut out all of that low end junk. I'm going to set a really sharp slope, so I really am just cutting everything beneath that frequency as quickly as I possibly can. So let's play the kick drum first of all, and we'll see where we want to set it. So the thing we're looking for is you can actually see the lowest fundamental on the analyzer. If we play it again, watch around here and you'll see that big boom shape of the low end of the kick. So all I want to do is take this high pass filter and set it somewhere just slightly beneath it. Really, this is only clearing up stuff right at the very bottom of the of our hearing range, really, around 20 or 30 hertz. But let's check again. That's all we do. That is a perfect setting for a kick drum just to clean up the mud. Now this is separate to, say, if you want to start just creatively giving your kick more bass or less bass. That's a slightly different thing. That is just the creative side of mixing. This is very technical. This is just to get rid of the nonsense that you really don't want. So at 30 hertz, we've cleaned all that up. That'll help us make sure there's no mud that gets into big subs or any of that sort of playback system. Let's go on to our snare drum. So here's the snare drum. Exactly the same thing. I'm going to open Nectar and make sure I've removed the compressor. Choose this, change the slope to the sharper slope, and then we'll have a listen. Okay, and you can actually see the low fundamental there. And you can see a tiny little bit of where that kick is coming in as well. I'm just going to roll this up until we basically stop at the snare drum's fundamental. .92 hertz. So we're now getting rid of stuff which would have got in the way of our kick drum, because our kick drum wants a lot of that energy beneath 92 hertz. But all we're getting from this is just extra nonsense. We're getting a bit of a weird, weak kick drum sound in the snare mic. Probably not that helpful. So we can safely get rid of everything below 92. And as I'm working, I'll tend to maybe drag it back a little, listen to what it sounds like at 87 here. And I'm just going to slightly move it and see if it makes any difference. But I'm happy with this. This is a great setting. So let's move on. High tom. So in this, I don't have too many tom drums. I think I've got one maybe just here. So let's have a quick listen to this and see what we've got. Okay, so again, we'll get Nectar. In fact, what I'll do is I'll just copy it over from the other track. Open up Nectar, and we'll find that point where, again, we can see where that lowest fundamental hits. Brilliant. There we go. And again, we're clearing up space for that super low end of the kick drum, and probably likely the bass guitar as well. Let's do the floor tom and see if we can find a floor tom on here, which we've got a tiny bit of at the end here. All right, let's see where the floor tom ends. Very similar to the kick drum. In fact, the first time I played it, I had this set too high, and you probably heard that. If I set it where it was at about 87, when we copied it from the previous track, I'll play it again, have a listen, and then I'll remove that and listen to the extra low end that we get from that floor tom. So you can see it really does cut when you select that frequency. This very sharp slope really gets rid of things. So let's set this. Sort of 38. So really this floor tom is one of those floor toms that lives a little bit in the same region as the kick drum. Right. Let's have a quick listen to the kick, snare and the tom tracks so far and see what they sound like. And I'll turn the processing on and off. On first. So you see, it's not night and day. We're not changing things so dramatically that we're starting to hear things get thinner. We're just creating space for things that really do want to live that low, and we're not going to get in the way when we come to do our creative EQing, reverbs later on. Things are just going to stay tidy. So let's go and do the overheads. Overheads, of course, can be a bit of a preference. Some people like to just make them cymbal mics. Some people like to make them kit mics. That's your choice. Just whatever you want to do on that front, whatever you like. But we will find the lowest part of the sound that's going to be in the overheads that is kind of practical. With the overheads, I like to sort of decide, really, it's about deciding whether you want the kick drum in the overheads or not, even if you're going for a bit of a full kit overhead sound. So let's find the place where we want to set this. Let's solo it up. And let's go back to the start of this section. And that's so we've got some easy kick drum we can see. So I'd be happy with 50 Hertz, clearing out everything beneath 50 Hertz there really. For the overheads, we're digging in slightly to that kick drum, but actually that just means we've got even more space for the low end of the close kick drum mic. Low end is a funny one because you might already know that we don't really hear low end as a localized source. It's very hard to identify where a 50 Hertz sound comes from. But of course that doesn't mean that multiple 50 Hertz sounds from multiple mics on a drum kit don't start to cause phase issues. By clearing out this super low end, just one microphone handles this sound. And that means you just get a little bit more clarity from that real kind of dinosaur footstep thump kind of stuff that can be super fun to have in a kick drum. Okay, let's just carry on moving. Tambourine. Let's have a little look at this one. and see what we've got going on here. Okay, again, I'm going to set it to the sharper slope, 48 decibels per octave. Let's have a listen. And this is a really interesting one because I'm actually just going to turn my volume up a little, because you can really hear how we can remove so much mucky muck from these from this tambourine track and really have no impact on the sound at all. Like, I'm sweeping up to 658 hertz and it's not doing anything significant, but it is going to stop that little bit of additional sound interfering with the other tracks that would like that region to be clear, so you can really hear the things that are in that audio region. And around 3000 hertz, 3K, I can kind of hear where we're starting to get a thinning of the sound. So now I'm going to switch it on and off, just the high pass filter, and we'll just see how it sounds in comparison. Yeah, about 1 kilohertz basically. That's why I like that set. I think I can hear a bit of that hand noise, the thump from the hand noise disappear. And I suppose in some scenarios you might want to keep that, so don't necessarily take all that out every single time you mix a tambourine. But for this track, because it is just providing that sound over the top of everything, it is a high-pitched sound, so I'm going to keep it without any of that hand bump that you can hear on the tambourine. Let's go do the bass. Here we go. I'm going to copy this over, drag this back, and let's have a listen. Oh, so there's loads of signal in there. And I'm probably just going to make the decision to come to probably about 40 hertz maybe. Because you can again see all of that energy right at the bottom. And so I don't want to take that energy out because, well, let's see what happens if I were to. You could probably hear there that what happened was we just took away some of the fun of that super low end. Again, this process is about cleaning up tracks ready for you to do your creative processing. You may decide you still want less low end in the bass, but that has to be something you do in comparison to all the other tracks in the mix, not something just that is such a technical process like this, but such a great starting point. Alrighty, let's try the ukulele. Copy that over. Let's have a listen to the ukulele. This is such a wonderful example because you can immediately see where the main part of the sound is and where the unnecessary kind of subby stuff that we just don't need exists. And just in case you're interested as to what that low stuff sounds like, I'll play it to you. It's kind of pointless noise. It's just not helping our ukulele sound. So let's turn this off. There we go. And let's roll this up until we get rid of all that extra scruff. And if you look over here, you'll be able to see the sort of shadow of what it was versus what it is now, after we've added the high pass, the remaining energy that's there. So the energy was sitting up at somewhere like -60, and now it's sitting way down at -100. So that shows how much you can clear out, because you can imagine all these bits of extra nonsense down in that super low end all stacking together will just create a hum if you have a really unlucky situation. It doesn't always work out like that. Sometimes it is just something that kind of you can get away with. But if you've got a sec and you can clean up your tracks with this kind of EQ process, it does help. You see, you don't really get any change in the instrument. As I said, this is all about helping out other tracks. It's about helping out the low end in other tracks. What it's not about is changing the sound of the instrument. So let's move on to our electric guitar. Bring this over, open it up, and find where we can... Oh, whoops. Delete that. Find out where we can move this to get all of the guitar signal that we want and nothing that we don't. And we'll just solo it up. Lovely, so that seems to be about 60 Hertz. So we can just, again, create that subspace for the bass guitar and the kick drum, and we're getting out of the way of the super low bass. And finally, let's go and do our last track that is in this section. And let's just set up our high pass filter to 48. And let's have a look and a listen. Seems like somewhere around 177 Hertz, but I can see there's a couple of things happening just beneath it. And when I'm unsure, what I do is I just have a quick boost around that frequency just to see if it's something I want to keep or if it really is scruffy nonsense that doesn't need to be there. Let's check it out. Yeah, that stuff around 123 Hertz, it doesn't need to be there. It's just getting in the way. It just sounds like hum. So let's take it up to around that 170 Hertz territory. Brilliant. There we go. So now we've put all of those on. If I play the whole track back and bypass all the processing, we shouldn't actually hear anything that sounds night and day. We should have just managed to clean our tracks enough that the track largely sounds about the same, but the low end has just been tightened that fraction. Here we go. It's really, really small amounts, but it does just clean it up just enough to get that kick and snare punching a little bit harder. So that is a wonderful workflow and a wonderful way to start off your mix with some high pass filtering, just to give you that helping hand moving forward in the mix to get rid of anything that you don't need. Why do we do it on the low end and not on the high end? it's because we can actually separate out high-end frequencies easier, and they cause fewer problems with masking. They do still do that, and sometimes you do take high-end out of a signal, especially if it's fizzy and it's annoying, but it tends to be a little bit more, depends on what you're doing. You don't tend to take high-end out just because. You wait to see if it's a problem first. With low-end, although I certainly think you should always listen before you make a decision, low end is just one of those things, and this particular process is just one of those things that you can often do, more often than not, and it will just be beneficial. So I would start your mix with this and see how it helps. And if you are interested in knowing any more about mixing, head over to my website where I've got a free guide for you, which is my whole kind of mixing philosophy and mixing workflow, just kind of condensed down into 6 steps that will help you get much better mixes. So thank you so much for watching. Please do like and subscribe, and I will see you on a video next week.